I don't know, is it evening, afternoon, good evening. How's everyone doing? I want to start by saying first, thank you to the ancestors. Thank you to the Orisha. Thank you to the Creator, whoever you worship, whoever you turn to. I want particularly, if we can all just give a round of applause to Maori and just... Naeem Akbar used to say that the very fact that we exist is resistance and revolutionary. That what we came through as a people through the slave ships, through the Middle Passage, the understanding was that we would not be here. The fact that we are actually here in a creative space, actually together, Maori, thank you, the ancestors are happy because we're here in an act of resistance. That very fact that we're together is an act of protest. Art itself is protest. So those of us here, we're in a revolutionary space. So thank you for that. I want to start one by also thanking my partner, Rashid Shabazz, who allowed for this space to sit here with my brother, my best friend of over 20, close to 23, over 23 years. I think I met Bradford when he was 17, when on the campus of Howard University. Bison's in the house. And I remember, we were just talking about this recently. I was on the campus of Howard and we were at a political meeting. I won't say what the meeting was. It was a political meeting. And we were, I just remember Bradford with his locks. He had his hat he used to wear all the time, and his jean overalls. And I just remember something about Bradford. And actually, can you bring the first slide up? I remember something about Bradford that I think is still true today, was that he was so loving and so sincere. Just the first time I met him, and his love for Black people and his love for community was so palatable, so something that you can feel just by his, if you know Brad, you know how, I won't say naive, but his love of people is so much that sometimes it just is so open to the world and humanity. And I don't know too many people like that. So I love you, Brad. I'm so excited and so humble and so honored. I think we waited 8 years. Like we were supposed to be on stage 8 years ago for another conference, and we both couldn't make it. And I actually am honored to be here with you tonight. This is legendary. I don't think we'll ever be on stage. We're always so busy to actually be here tonight. So I want to start the conversation by going back to this idea of love and looking at this image that you chose to start the conversation from Haile Garima's Ashes and Embers. And I wanted to open up because everyone knows the story of your grandparents. Everyone knows the story of being a mortician, potentially, being a journalist. If they don't know, they'll hear a little bit about that tonight. But particularly, what I'm really interested in is the textures and depths of what you do in film. I mean, you are probably, in my opinion, and I'm biased, you're one of the greatest cinematographers, not just of this generation, of all time. You are just on. And I didn't signify that with the word Black. I'm saying cinematographer. In every film I watch by you, the thing that I love most is the textures, the depth that you bring to us as a people. But more importantly, every frame I watch, it's almost like I could take it and put it on a wall. it's like the pictures are so clear, so beautiful. And I just want to know if you could just talk a little bit about where are you drawing that from? Like, what is that sensitivity? That's the word I'm looking for. You are so sensitive to people. Like you're sensitive to everything. You're emotional to that point where you're drawing from. But what is that sensitivity drawing from? Where are you bringing that from? Like, as a friend, as someone who knows you, I can make assumptions, but I want you to share with us, where's your love drawn from? What's your sensitivity on those images in the world? Sorry, I put you on the spot.
Friends.
I'm not trying to be Trevor Noah like that tonight, but I was
Friends. Well, so our answer it has two parts. One is, well, I'll make it very personal. When you have friends that you've known longer than 20 years who are arguably better human beings in many ways than yourself, I find it hard to show up, number one, to work and not work hard, So when I'm at work, I'm thinking about you, I think about how hard you work, how much you're about family, how committed you are to community. That's not just like show up at Howard at 17, like that's who you are, that's from the womb, your story is this whole idea of resistance that is your story, that's why I look up to you, that's why I followed you everywhere you've gone, that's why I've always, dreamed and make sure that you're part of my life, because you're the bar of accountability. As long as you're around for me, and I've tried to be as committed, so first it's accountability, and that's very imperfect, I don't always arrive at that, but accountability is one. My grandparents were, specifically my grandfather, but he was no nonsense, It was clear from an early age that he expected certain things from us, and that burden and that gift still is probably with me now. So I just try to, when I show up to work as a cinematographer, I just try to work hard, Like, it's not magic. It's not black magic. It's just hard ass work, you know what I mean? So I just try to, it's a healthy sense of fear. I just try to pull from that. And, that sense of community. My sister's here in the crowd, like, you hear your grandparents say, oh, I used to do something and I walk home, and on the way home, if I did something, the neighbor would whoop me, and then I go down the street, the next neighbor would whoop me, and da-da-da-da. Like, you hear your grandparents talk about that, but like, actually, that was like, my sister's like almost 7 years older than me, like, that's our life, that was actually our life, you know what I mean? Like, this is not just some stories some elders told you, like, oh, that's crazy, not me, I just do whatever I want. No, we used to literally, if I did something on the bus, by the time I got home, my sister knew about it, and she would take care of me. And then she would like let me outside, and then the neighbor would know, and then he or she would take care of me, and then my grandparents would find out, which was scary, and then my mom would come home and find out. So it's just this whole idea of like, I'm saying all to say that for whatever this moment, and hopefully it's not a moment, hopefully we can continue to have a healthy conversation with cinema, which I think is going to, and hopefully we'll build on this. I think it's going to really be hard for African people to have a continuous healthy conversation with filmmaking, because we have to really do some reworking of ourselves in order to make it be what I think we want it to be. But in the meantime, whatever this thing you see is going on with me now, ultimately, I just don't want, I don't want black people to be upset with me. I just want to make sure that like, I don't want to be in trouble, So I think about
by black people, you mean Stephanie, like not
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just want to make sure that I'm not, because it's not even about the lighting or the texture. It is, you know what I mean? But that's a byproduct of me literally just thinking, okay, what's this? Here's the script. I'm just gonna be really technical, very sort of didactic about it, but like procedure about it. Like, here's the script. What is the scene? What's the story in this scene? And then what's the story in this shot? You know what I mean? Like, I have to, like, in order for me to even feel like, because I'm a Cancer, so in order for me to even feel like I'm actually
Bring the horoscope.
I'm actually doing what I need to be doing in order for me to not walk out of the room crying and saying, oh, this is like, what am I doing here? I'm never making another movie again. In order for, like, I have to go through all the necessary steps so that when that camera turns over, that I feel like I've done all the hard work or all my due diligence, at least tried. You know, you never quite arrive there to tell the story that's on the page. Like, I still feel like in my form as a cinematographer, I'm still just I'm a service provider. You know what I mean? I'm a blue collar worker. You know, I'm there to service, I'm in there in service of the story. And then I'm there in service of the director. And so anything you see on the screen, the director has 100% complete ownership of that. I just have to like do the hard work to make sure that what's in the director's mind's eye is materialized on the screen. So all that texture you see, it has lineage because I'm totally biased. I totally think good light is one thing and not this thing, you know? It's very black and white for me in that way. But I think I can wrap that. I think that's just a wrapper over a bigger idea. And so, but I pull from fear, I pull from anxiety, I pull from the pedagogy that's got me here. I pull from all the books that I've read as a kid, or picture books that I looked at as a kid, or all the books that I looked at Sankofa, or all the books Steph and I've collected over the years, or all the trips I've taken. All that comes into play. Like any normal like artist or practitioner or whoever, human being, you know. But I just like any other human being. I just like the feel of certain places. You know what I mean? Like I really used to love the feel of my grandmother's house in Chicago. Like it was very different from the feel of my grandparents' house in Louisville, Kentucky. Like that's different. Like Louisville, Kentucky is black aristocracy. That's like the air is cleaner. Nah, seriously. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like the air is thinner. It's cleaner. Like my grandmother's house used to smell like eucalyptus. Like you go in the bathroom, there was like eucalyptus plants on the back of the toilet. Like the bathroom never smelled bad. You know what I mean? Like it never smelled like grease. It never smelled like a pilot light from a gas stove got left on a little too long. It never had like it. Because my grandparents in Louisville they had central air. You know what I mean? Like those things all influence how you deal with
no
space.
Newport smell, no.
There was no cigarette smell. Like my grandmother had breast cancer in the '60s, so that was done. So cigarettes were out. They were well traveled. You know what I mean? Because my grandfather was a mortician, so they had things around. They had delicate things. They had like my grandmother in Chicago. You couldn't sit on the couch. That's why she had the plastic cover on there. And she'd say, Don't sit on the duvet. But like my grandmother in Louisville was like, there was no plastic covers, but you knew there was like the King Arthur chair in the corner, like don't sit on that. You know what I mean? Or like the Romare Bearden at the end of the hall, like don't put your hair on. You know what I mean? Don't. So all those things inform where I'm comfortable and where I'm not comfortable. And so they all come into play when I'm either in a cornered or like I can't figure out a way to get myself out of the scene. Like, as much as like the airiness of my grandparents' house with all their windows and all this beautiful light and the herringbone floor and all that stuff that was going on in their house, like I don't really reference that. I really kind of reference my grandmother's house in Chicago, which was so much more atmospheric and felt way more cinematic and felt slightly more intentional as it relates to my practice in film.
Well, I want to. There's so many questions. I'm sure everyone has questions. But I want to go back to because I want to get into community. I want to talk about Haile, obviously, because I know you always talk about him, and I know this space is so familiar with him. But I want to talk about this image. But I wanted to go back to something. I was kind of joking about Stephanie, but you have an amazing partner who's here, we should say as well. And One thing Hailey talks about is accountability a lot and needing to be in community with those who look like you and feel like you and hold you in that same way of language and narrative that you're engaged with. And one of the things that I hear him seemingly holding back a lot of criticism these days because he's afraid of how people will perceive or hold that criticism in this new generation, maybe because we're sensitive, but he has curved himself from actually critiquing. And I wonder how you feel like, the reason I raised Stephanie is like, Rashida critiques me, right? Like if I come home, she'll critique my shit, right? So I'll be like, okay, you're holding me accountable. We don't have community in that way, or at least I don't, unless like you were saying, I could come to you and you'll hold me accountable. And that accountability doesn't mean we're not imperfect, right?
Yes.
It means that you call me on my shit, Rashida will call me on my shit, right? I'm assuming Stephanie does that as well. But I'm more interested in who's holding you accountable around the work. Who actually comes to you and says, Brad, that's not. That like your lighting is dope, but that's high. Is that highly? Is that highly? Is that who in your community is actually pushing you to be out more and saying like, not just coming to you and be like, yo, that's so dope. Like you're so dope, but actually saying like you're dope, but like where are you going to? What's next for Brad?
Oh man, it's such a good question. It's such a good question. Wow.
And it just seems like it's a crisis in our community to be able to critique.
You're hitting it right on the. I mean, I'm gonna go.
I'm sorry. I said I wasn't gonna go Trevor Noah on you, but I kind of went.
This is what your best friend does to you. I mean, listen. What Steph does and has always done, and now we have two beautiful children together. Honestly, like, it's all whack to me when I see them anyway. So my accountability, that always puts everything into perspective anyway. Like, like that makes everything less precious to me. In terms of like my practice, that makes it kind of like, and that's like more and more apparent like over the last 5 years since the birth of like my oldest, Olukai, like it just doesn't feel the same anymore, which is a whole other conversation about what the hell I'm gonna do next. But it doesn't. That's the first point of accountability is to not have any conversation about it at all because it's not that important, really. Like that, for me, is we all need to get to that point first because what's important, and I don't mean as an artist, as a practitioner, yes, your practice is important, but the things we aspire for, in particular in the film context, the things we want from people that do not like us, have no love for us on every level, which is what this whole idea of accountability, this whole idea of what is good and what isn't good, like our whole measurement of that, and I've had to grow into this, you know what I mean? This is new for me, that our whole measurement of that doesn't mean anything anyway when you come home to family and you see your partner that's been through all of your bullshit with you and your kids that are like, where's Baba? And you out trying to win an Academy Award or whatever the nonsense is you're in the process of doing when you're making films, which hasn't been able to shake all of those shackles, right? So that's the first step. The second one is, it's the most important question. Actually, it's really the only important question to me now is, there were many films, well, there are two things, I'm just gonna say it, there are two things that I feel like, there are two films that I feel like I wish we would have had a more collected conversation around why they worked and why they didn't work. Okay, so, excuse me, it's like a little lengthy, but like, Beast of the Southern Wild came out, and I remember feeling like, what is everybody talking about? And if this doesn't work for us, or it works for us, like, okay, if it works for you, let's really unpack it. Let's talk about why it's problematic on many levels and why people connected to it emotionally and why things felt a particular way. I didn't feel that way, but I didn't feel like there was real conversation happening around it because somebody else controlled the conversation. White supremacist logic controlled the conversation. The white supremacist film critic community controlled the conversation. It was a perfect opportunity for us to have said, I'm not feeling this, or I'm feeling this, and let us wrestle with that, because it wasn't a story told by us, it wasn't a story really about us, I felt like, but we didn't really unpack it. That was a missed opportunity for us to really like control the narrative. I remember hearing Kenneth Turan say that, I forgot the little girl's name now, Hush Puppy had cotton ball hair, and I was like, you don't get to say that. You don't get to say that, but nobody was on the New York Times writing in, or nobody wrote A.O. Scott and said, what are you saying? That never happened because we weren't clear on where we were with that film. The other film is a film that I shot that I felt like we should have had more conversation around, because I'm really curious on why it didn't work and why it worked, and it's also one that really is a pressure point for me, and it's one that I've continued to say is like it's never gonna happen again because it was the right storm of things, but I don't want that storm anymore, which was Mother of George. Like, I felt like we should have sat down and talked about that film. I thought the conversation around that film was leaned one way. You know what I mean? I felt like it worked in many ways, but it was terribly imperfect. And Andrew could have learned why that film, and I could have learned why that film was terribly imperfect. I felt that way about Moonlight. I just felt like, I remember one time Hailey said to me, oh yeah, well, when Spike made She's Gotta Have It, the black feminist community, he was done. Tony K. Bombara, Audre Lorde, they were like, you done. We're not messing with you ever again. Like, it was over for him. You know what I mean? It was over for him. And I don't know if they had a conversation with him about it or not, but he deserved to have there deserved to be a conversation about it. Because that's how he's gonna get better. You know what I mean? He means well, but that's how he gets better. I think the same thing with Moonlight. I just felt like there were the women characters in the film in another time, in another iteration when we were less thirsty, he would have been done. It would have been done. It would have been the conversation over. But that's not how we work. That's not necessarily good either, because in another time and space, that could be my son making that film, you know what I mean? And with all the good intentions, with all my baggage, and all the things I don't want my son to do that I do, I've done, I want to create a new human being, to nurture a new human being into existence. Like, I can't control every nuance, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure what a complicated, expressive person he's gonna be. Both of them will be. But I would hope that if he made something, or if, and the spirits have it, a daughter did something that was terribly imperfect, or whatever, and that's not pejorative, that just means, it deserves to have a conversation. I felt like we should be having more conversations around these things, because the worst thing we can do is pretend like we don't have a feeling about why it doesn't work. And the thing that we need to be doing as community, because we don't owe anybody anything, y'all. We don't, listen, this is one thing I do know. I said this to Ava the other day. I was like, the moment we start making movies like Oscar Michaud, we out. We're not getting no Oscar nominations, we're not getting Emmy Awards, we're not getting any of that, because as soon as you check out a white supremacist grammar in your films, they're not talking to us no more. So right now, the reason why, and I'm a culprit of it, you know what I mean? The reason why I'm in the conversation, the reason why Arrival even got nominated, yeah, I feel like there's a lot of hard work in there, but there was things in there that were palpable for them. But the moment we decide that we're not doing that anymore, and I'm not saying that's what we should be doing, I think about it a lot. The moment that we decide that's not what we're doing anymore, then we're out of the conversation, and we have to be prepared to have a landing pad, a new reality for ourselves where we make films, we gather like this, we have conversation, we totally disagree, we walk out the room angry and upset. With all those things that we deserve to have as human beings, we need to have that, because if we're not having that, then don't expect cinema to address our needs, which for me are grammatical needs, which are the films. Our music, man, it's like crazy. Our music, I'm listening to this cat, Grips, that Sean Peters hit me to, and Saba that Sean Peters hit me to. And I'm just like, film is whack. Film is whack. Cinema is whack because it can't get to the way a bell or a drum pattern or a whisper or like a bit of black silence touches us. Film has not. The films that have achieved that, like Ashes and Embers, To Sleep with Anger, Killer of Sheep, Passing Through, Daughters of the Dust. You know what I'm saying? In the Morning, Random Acts. Like all those things didn't check in, so that's why we're feeling it. Sorry.
No. That's exactly. This is an unscripted love letter type of. This is perfect. Can y'all go to the next slide? So everything you're talking about is just obviously one. I appreciate you being transparent in this space. Obviously, we're in community, and this is a community I know you love and that you're accountable to. So it's less. It was more to get to that point that you're raising about. Because I feel like the Black Lives Matter movement, to what Tawana's doing, what folks are doing at this moment, is about bringing critical thought into conversation. And I think the movement is doing that. I think there's things happening within cinema with folks like yourself, Ava, trying to bridge that, Ryan. But what you just said is so profound, and I remember Archie Shepp talked about this. And he talked about, there's something about music, because it has the drum in it, that allows it to be revolutionary, that allows it to be kind of like that step, right? But everyone knows that with cinema, the whole point, it's a cultural war. The camera itself is like a gun, and the whole basis of it was colonial. So the question I have is, if that's true, and we're saying, and we're having this conversation about cinema, and we always have this conversation, is there a black cinema? Can we even get to a black cinema within cinema, right? The question then goes to, if we're building this, right? If we're trying to create with the tools of the master, quote unquote, within cinema, knowing that Birth of a Nation, and you dissect this a lot in terms of, I think you do it through lens, through the way you do the close-ups and not. What do we do? What is our path in cinema? Is this it? Is this what we need to be doing?
This is where it starts. It starts with a commune. It starts with a collective idea. Like, what is okay? This question of what is black cinema? That's like, that's like 22-year-old Hailey at UCLA with Larry Clark and all of them in a room, just like, this is black cinema. No, that ain't black cinema. Who are you to define what blackness is? Which is same conversation we're having now. Who are you to define what black is? But I think, again, if we have a community where we're not in conversation with everybody, when we're in conversation, it's okay to have private conversations. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's fine. We still have the right to do that. The conversation around what black cinema is, until we become fully developed and realized human beings in this hemisphere we struggle to fully realize ourselves. We do it masterfully in some ways and terribly in other ways. The conversation about what is black cinema is going to be part fascist. It's going to be like, this is the way and this is the only way, and it's going to be very egalitarian on the other hand, which is everybody's opinion is valued. I think we should have both, because both are healthy, especially for underdeveloped people. So for me, as an undeveloped human being, terribly underdeveloped human being, for me, my challenge is, because it's a black director, because it's black actors, because there's some black money, don't make it black film, to me.
You chose this image. What was your thinking when we were going back and forth and you sent me the images that you wanted to draw from? Why'd you choose this particular image?
Because it goes exactly back. It goes exactly to what you just asked. It's like intentionality. The grammar behind something to me is what makes it black. That opens it up, right? That opens it up for some jokers to come up in here who don't look like us, who we're having a hard time with, saying this black cinema. I'm saying better get ready for it. Because until we really clear the air and claim it for ourselves, there are going to be a lot of people passing through saying, this is black cinema because it met all the requirements. But that's what you need. You need that process. I'm not afraid of the process. You know what I'm saying? I just need to know, I need to be clear where I am in the process. The reason why I feel like this image was so important is because this is James Vanderzee, commissioned by Marcus Garvey to pose a moment, to take a picture, right? I mean, if you know Marcus Garvey's story, this brother was layered. His brother had layers. You better believe that moment right there is a curated moment. Curated moment by a master curator, a master thinker, a lover of us, who knew the power of the image, shot by a master curator, a lover of the image, from somebody who especially understood us optically and knew how to photograph us. So to me, that's a black photograph. It's not moving, so it ain't movie. So filmmakers don't claim it. It's not a motion picture movie. That's a black picture. You know what I mean? Every bit of it fails in the European, Eurocentric, white supremacist grammatical structure. There's no converging lines. The brother on the corner is cut on the edge of the frame. The brother on the other edge cut on the frame. There's an odd space in between Marcus Garvey and whoever this brother is. Like, nobody's really looking into, the most important people in the frame aren't looking into the camera. Marcus Garvey and this other gentleman, he's looking down. If you were at Harvard or you were at Yale, and even if you were at Howard, this frame would fail. But it owes nobody nothing. All it owes is the moment and to being the true spirit of the UNIA in that moment. So to me, I just felt it was important, and it's an important photograph for me, and I think about it, and I put it in some of my lookbooks because it just like, the frame with itself is beautiful, but the process of making the frame to me is what makes it win. You know what I mean? Makes it a black. Like, you know, this is one frame where I'm just like, that's ours. That's our shit. That's ours. If you don't look like us, you're not in the community and you feel it, I know why you feel it, because it's special, because it's clear on its intention. And that's what makes it universal. That's when it becomes universal, because then it's clear on its intention. And it's not apologizing for being what it is, you know?
Thank you. The one thought that I have in addition to this, like, you and I share both cultural fathers in Haile and Haki.
Yep.
Haki being obviously someone who I grew up under as a storyteller, writer. But one of the people that I don't talk about a lot that this makes me think of is Ackland Lynch. And Ackland Lynch, I don't know how many people know Ackland. Is a philosopher, writer, thinker, economist. I mean, he's everything, right? He always talks about cultural infrastructure, that in order for us to, and we talk about this all the time, the fact that why Ava was so prolific and why she is the fact that she, as a publicist, she understood the importance of marketing, the importance of distribution, and was doing that and tried to build that. Why this space is so critical is creating a space for us to be able to distribute, to show, and tell our stories. And I just think that Garvey, for me, at the minimum level, I agree with everything you said, also was about infrastructure, was also about building a space for us, by us, and about us. And so to your point around curation, I just wanted to flag that. I just wanted to mention that because I think Ackland, he so talks about art as resistance, that every act in itself is resistance, that tying it into movement and resistance is important to me.
Well, what do you think? What do you think because it's, funny enough, is when we met each other, we didn't, you didn't know that I knew Haile, and I didn't know that you knew Haki, but they're close friends, and I think they have an allegiance around a particular thing, you know? I think for some people it's more obvious than others. It's more obvious for some people than others, but what do you think that, because I always is like, you know, Elisa or like Leslie Hewitt always says it to me, like, you know, when you're from the same manual, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're gonna find your way to each other at some point. Like, on a spirited level, you know, that's 23 years. That's kind of obvious now that we were supposed to be together. But on a total pragmatic level, like, what do you think it is? What is it that makes that relationship special, and why, and how it independently exists on its own, but also as it exists between you and I, you know, because it's the thing that keeps us,
I think that's the thing that keeps us accountable is those two elders, you know.
I think there's a few things. One, anyone who knows Hailey and my story is that I took a script writing class with Hailey, and he was like, "You're my worst student ever." So that's why I'm not making film, and that's why I left it to you to do it. And so I love Hailey for that, because I found my space with Haki, being a poet, being a writer, telling story, and being an intellectual, which that's who I am. That's why I'm in the behind the scenes a lot of time. Actually, this is not common for me to be on stage. I almost feel like we're in the living room of our homes, because this is how I normally would be with you, right? And so, and Rashida knows that. Everyone who knows me knows that I'm more of a builder behind the scenes. I like to allow people to create and to provide the resources for them to create. And I think what happened with Haki and Hailey is that Hailey, being as persistent and blunt, so to speak, in himself, he's very humble. And one thing he acknowledges often is what he was trying to do with Mifadu and what he's trying to do with St. Kofa was like, he saw third world press. And he found the importance of institution building. So I think what you and I share in general, and what we talk about all the time, is the importance for institutions, for our children, for our community. And what has happened is that through the war in our community, both a physical, spiritual war in our community, the taking of resources, the robbing of resources of the continent and the diaspora of us, both our images, both our stories, both the ways in which we're impacted, leaves us without that infrastructure. And so you and I having conversations about where do we send our children to school? Where do we allow them to be safe in an environment where the president is tweeting about LeBron James? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
That's where we're at right now. White supremacists openly running for office, right? We're in a fascist moment, but are we reacting to that fascist moment in the way we should be? Are we still acting as if we're okay? And so Hailey and Haki carry that kind of urgency the same way you and I do. And I think for me, every moment is almost like, I may not be here, right? And so, and I don't say that just as a black man, I just say that I value my every moment, every breath, understanding that you don't know when the last day will be, but what am I leaving for legacy? You and I talk about legacy a lot. So what I see with Hailey and Haki is that they're legacy builders, right? It's almost an art. You can't, Hailey says this, you can't be egotistical in art, right? You gotta let the art be. You can't let your ego be the one guiding, because otherwise then it's about you, right? But if it's about community, then you gotta constantly, and that's very difficult in a European or American context where it's about the individual. It's about me getting mine. It's about me getting those things for myself, right? My own home, my own car, you know? And that's what Hailey says, we're decorative people, right? We're able to be trinkets, right? And so Haki's the same. The way Hailey talks to you, Haki's talking to me, right? And it's always, but the thing that they always stress is resource.
Right.
You know, they're like, if I had this, I'd be able to do this. And I think what I see is that we still wrestle with that. And what I've been very proud of you as a friend is your navigation of this. I'm proud of Ryan. I'm proud of everybody who's able to navigate a space that's very hostile. Hollywood is not welcoming, right? And if you look at the roots of it, it's not welcoming, but to see us thriving in that, that's what I was trying to say. There's something spiritual about that to me, that there's something that if you're able to be like, I'm not gonna live in LA, I'm gonna be in Baltimore, my people, with Elisa, with Jomo. Like that's, where's Jomo at? Like,
Where's Jomo
oh, there we go. With Sean, like that's community, that's love. Like to be able to be like, same with Ryan. Like I'm good. Like I don't need to be.
Well, I think without beating our like Reservoir Hill drum, come to Reservoir Hill, come to Reservoir Hill.
Come to Baltimore.
Come to
Come
Baltimore.
to Philly.
Come to Philly.
Come to Philly.
I mean, or go to the Bay. I mean, listen, safe space. All I can say is safe space is real for us, and specifically in filmmaking in Hollywood, we have had a lot of wins and successes, but we've had a lot of casualties. And I don't know everybody's individual, the nuance of everybody's individual journey, you know, why one person showed up and made one film and never made another film, or why one person showed up and made a film, they made 2 powerful films and the last 5 have not been as strong. Like, I don't know everybody's particular journey. But what I do know about us, one thing that's required is like a sense of safety. And it kind of goes back to what I'm trying to imperfectly say, which is, and this is something that, you know, AJ always touches on, is they're not expecting anything from us anyway, so we're free. I don't need to live in LA because living in LA is not gonna render anything from me anyway. It's not gonna render any more from me in LA as it would be if I lived in Cleveland or Louisville, Kentucky. It's gonna be the same, they're gonna give black people the same shit wherever we are. So it's
That's true.
So if you're waiting for them to give you something based on your proximity to them, you are out of your mind.
Yeah.
It's never gonna happen. This is never gonna happen. So for me, you might as well just live where you wanna live, and when they call you to do Star Wars, or they call you to do or Black Panther, they call you to do A Wrinkle in Time, the best thing you can do is call up all your friends and be like, I don't want to be am I a sellout if I do this? And it's great to hear, you know, everybody from my gaffer from Montreal, who I've done 2 movies with, to Malik, Saeed, be like, better go do that. And then finally at the very end, go to Hailey's office, like literally like this. Yo, Baba, I got something I gotta tell you about. I gotta ask you something. Hey man, they asked me to shoot this one movie, this film. What is it? What is it? I don't have time for this, man. What is it? Baba, they asked me to shoot Star Wars. Do it! Do it!
I'm glad you shot Star Wars. Thank you.
But I say all that to say that, part of the reason why we can go do these things, you know, which is an interesting moment. This is something to think about. The reason why Rada can go into these writing rooms and be Rada with the gold fronts, living in Baltimore, is because Rada's like, I'm gonna say what I wanna say, I'm gonna do what I wanna do, I'm gonna show up how I am, you're gonna accept me because the writing is undeniable. If this repels you, it don't matter anyway, because if I go home dead broke, I know I'm gonna get fed. I know that there are gonna be people there to catch me. And I'm not gonna feel less of anything, because if y'all not gonna let me write for y'all, I'm gonna go write for myself, which I'm ultimately doing anyway. And I'm gonna always self-determined. That's Rada, you know what I mean? So that's why community's important, because the landing pad is clear. You know what I mean? You know, and then there are those of us. I mean, I'm going forever. You know what I mean? Like, I'm actually not a good example, because I went and dipped my beak in there a little bit. You know what I mean? And I didn't. Some of us not even interested, which we should celebrate. Some of us, like Hailey, are uninterested, not interested at all, and are prolific. Kevin Everson. You know what I'm saying? Daniel Williams. Nefertiti and Guvu, not dipping in the, you know what I mean? Like, not even interested. And so these are all the examples we need for, to me, that's the aspiration. The aspiration is to get there where you're saying to yourself, all right, well, number one, if I go there and if I'm gonna navigate, I always know I have a blanket to fall in. If I don't go there, I'm gonna be fine either way. And I can do both, or I can choose one, and either way, as long as I have community, I'm gonna be fine, because I'm always gonna eat, my children are gonna be taken care of, nobody's gonna deny me access to basic human rights, which is basically how they clinch us at the end of the day. They tell you they're gonna take something away from you, and you get scared. And if you don't have community, you don't have so many people behind you, then I get it. I understand why it could be damaging, and why that you could be a casualty. But that's why community is more important anyway. And that's where we aggregate our ideas anyway. That's what inspires the vision anyway, right? So why wouldn't we just be there, you know? Why wouldn't we just stay there?
I appreciate that. And we have about 10 more minutes, and we're going to open it up to the audience for questions, because I know there's probably a lot.
But I have to ask, this goes back, because I think it's really...
Can we see the next slide? I don't know if it's another slide. Can we see another slide? I'm sorry.
Oh, wow, okay.
So you wanted to ask you?
Yeah, well, no, I don't have to, well, you know, that's Avedon. He's not one of us aliens. He's from another planet. But I was gonna say something briefly about proximity, which is, I've seen a lot of photographs, especially Leslie and I. We went into the vault of the Menil, and we saw every single frame Danny Lyons ever shot during the Civil Rights Movement. We saw every single frame Elliot Erwood ever shot during the Civil Rights Movement. And the one thing that's clear about Danny Lyons is that he was scared of Malcolm X. And the reason why I can tell you he was scared of Malcolm X is because he always shot Malcolm X from across the room. Malcolm's always tucked over somebody's shoulder. He's always like not looking at Danny. You know what I mean? He's always looking somewhere else. There's something about the opticality of his practice. Now, Danny Lyons' photographs of Martin Luther King are not that. There's a beautiful shot of he and Coretta in an airport in Mississippi, arm in arm, about to take off. In Alabama, about to take off, and he's in there, and it's so beautiful. But Malcolm, he was a little, and that lens determined the narrative. Avedon, you know what I mean? Like, this is, number one, the most expressive, the most interesting, one of the most artful images, in my opinion, that I've ever seen of Malcolm. The camera's very close. I know they're having a conversation. You know what I mean? Because Malcolm's looking over the camera. I'm sure Avedon just took his camera and did like that. I don't know how he did it, but there's something there that is a challenge for us. Like, stop doing it from across the room and get inside. You know, get inside the story, because that's how we change. That's how we change the grammar. One of the things I want to ask you, because I think when I think of also how we try to navigate this, all of it, whether we're there, here, wherever, is this the power of mythology, right? The power of the story that may or may not be true. Doesn't matter as long as it propels us to take another step forward, right? The power of mythology. I'm not talking about lies, I'm talking about mythology, right? The narrative that allows us to navigate our particular circumstances. You have a very particular and special relationship as a young person, as a child, and as an adult with the nation. Your last name is Shabazz, you know what I'm saying? Your father came here from the Caribbean, your mom came here from the Caribbean, you know, and you and your brothers and sisters grew up in the nation. Like, that's a very particular experience, you know? And I think, and it's something that I really admire about you and others in the nation, is that you all are able to navigate this whole thing because there's an agreed upon mythology that seems to be, and I could be wrong, and maybe I'm mystifying it, and I hope this is where the real question is like, what is that, how does that mythology, whatever that thing is, the many layers of it that some of us are familiar with, very familiar with, and some of it that we're totally not familiar with, that you're willing to share, how does that allow you, because you also, as long as Steph and I have known you, right, you have been navigating very particular nonprofit, social justice, activist-orientated spaces that are primarily either run by, not in the office run by white people, but are financed, patronized by white people, you know what I mean, that have, and then you have to be in conversation with those folks in a very complicated layer. No, I mean, it's what we do. It's what we're doing as filmmakers in the industry, right? How do you walk out of those meetings where you know you got the answer, but when you speak, I know they don't do it now because you're Rashid Shabazz, but when you speak, the air seems to get sucked out of the room, and people want to pretend like the narrative isn't that narrative, though you are in it, you live in it. You live in Brooklyn, you have a black child, you have a black wife, you see things through a particular lens. Like, How does that help you? How does this mythology around the nation, does it? How does it help you navigate? Maybe it doesn't, but how does it, if it does, how does it help you? Or if it doesn't, how does it help you? What's its application? How does it arm you, you know?
Can you go to the next image? First, I want to acknowledge that there's so many people in this room who love Brad and I just want to say thank you for being here. If I feel the love and I just feel the presence. The nation is really problematic for me, and I wrestle with it every single day for a number of reasons. One, because I think it was probably between UNIA and the nation was probably the closest we got to a formation as a people with ownership of property, of organs. And what I mean by organs is like the UNIA papers, the newspapers, stores. When my father talks about the nation in the 60s and the 70s, it was unfathomable. Joe Louis had milk. When you go into archives at Yale, into the archives, when I was at Yale and I would be studying the archives, to see the newspapers, all black newspapers, all the stores we owned, dry cleaners, museum, like everything, we owned everything. And to see that the problem that we have is around integration. And so the question we have, we're still segregated, but we are powerless because we were entering into this space. So for me, the nation, when you ask, I roll in like Rada in philanthropy. You know, like that's how I roll in. I don't ask for permission. When I was in any space, I always bring my full self. My white friends, everybody knows that Rashid was in the nation. They know what he's about. They know what he does. And the problem is that I wrestled with growing up in the nation. I was always the black sheep. I was always the one who was, I want to be with my mom. I don't want to be in Junior Fruit of Islam. I don't want to be, you know what I'm saying? I enjoy the stepping though, you know what I'm saying? But I didn't want to, I saw the patriarchy in it at a young age, and I wrestled with that patriarchy. And I knew I participated in it, and I participate in it, right, as a man. And so the things that were being said, some of it I was like, that's right on. And then some of it I would be like, that's not right on, right? And so early on, my father, who is, my uncle actually led security, Salim Muhammad, for Farrakhan. He was his right-hand man. He built the FOI up. And so I'm kind of a direct lineage into that family. And, but yeah, I don't engage fully. And it's not because I don't choose to. I see myself as a full human being. I appreciate Islam. I'm also grew up in a Christian household and a Muslim household, so it was duality. And I also wear lekis, so you can figure that out.
Right.
So for me, the question, to answer the question though, is that I always enter into spaces with truth. And I always enter into the space with my full self, and I navigate those spaces with integrity, and I try to hold on to the fact that I'm there to get resources for our people. And that every time I navigate those spaces, if it's not for my people, I don't need to be there. I don't need to be in spaces fighting for resources I can't get for my people. That's why I was able to drop $110 million for black people. When I was at Open Society Foundations, we fought for that. We navigated that. That was why I was able to work with Hank and Question Bridge and get them the money they needed to make sure it's institutionalized at the Smithsonian. So those are the things that I'm integrity. That's why I take money out of my own pocket to say, like, I'm gonna invest in my own wife, $10,000 so she could do Run, Mary, Run. So it could be in the museum, right? We invest in ourselves. And that comes from the nation, right? Like, I take my own money, I take my tax return and reinvest it into art. You know, I don't go, like, I don't need a car, we don't have a car, but my wife's up in the museum, right? Now, that doesn't mean we didn't debate about the money. But when it was time to make a decision, I said, look, babe, you're my greatest investment, right? Zahara is my greatest investment. right?
Right.
So like if we're talking about politics, we're talking about money, right? Like you're my greatest investment, so I'm going to invest. And look where it's taken it. It brought you and Common together to do Black America again. It brought you to do a project in Weeksville to bring you into art because you're ultimately an artist, right? The black rag, all that, the black square, floating in Common's video, right? Floating in Weeksville, telling us that like our monuments matter. At a time when these damn monuments are still up, we should be taking them down. Now, I don't care seeing Grant Lee, whatever. I just want to see Marcus Garvey. You know what I'm saying? I want to see Bradford Young. I want to see Haile Garima get his monument up in D.C. Right? I want to see our monuments. You could keep your monuments. I don't need to tear down your monuments because you're already pathetic. Right? I really want to see our monuments. That's what I want because that's what we deserve. We bled, sweat, and tears on this land with our native brothers and sisters. Come on, man. Come on. You know what I'm saying? They get mad at us. You see this picture? You see this picture? Like this picture is like, they think black women are docile, right? But you see who's leading this movement right now? This image to me, this Gordon Parks, to your point about up close, that's my mom. You know what I'm saying? That looks like my mom. That's what my mom used to wear. It was dignified. It wasn't like, oh, I'm gotta be dressed a certain way. It was just like, I was like, damn, she's on a mission. She's on a mission. And so for me, it was like, black women have always been leaders and matriarchs in our community. And so for me, it's almost like the conversation needs to be turned. This is the last thing I'll say, and I'm opening it up.
Don't stop.
Kathleen Cleaver wrote a piece about black women in the movement and Black Panthers, and we read it last year at MLK Now. For those who don't know, we do this event, Black Out for Human Rights, with Ryan Coogler, Ava DuVernay founded it. And I've been producing it the last couple of years. We did it last year. We did Black America again. We premiered it there on the screen. In the piece, she talks about, she challenges this idea that like, black women were docile in the movement, that Black Panthers, that the men were the ones who were saying like, women need to stop, right? And I was in there, I can't speak to it, but in the piece, what was so powerful is going to your point about the photograph about Malcolm, is that like, if at that time, every journalist was a white man, do you think a white man journalist in 1960s, 1970s is gonna go up to a black woman, interview her, and ask her thoughts on the movement?
Right.
Black women ran the Black Panther Party.
Right.
But like the image that we're shown, the stories that we're told is all we see is Huey.
That's it.
All we see is Bobby. The reality is like black women have always run movements. They always led movements. That's why in the art world you see Simone Lee. That's why you're working with Simone. That's why you're working with Leslie. All these women, black women have been leading the movement. And for me as a man, it's like, okay, let's acknowledge those are the stories I want to see. Those are the stories I want to hear because it changes perception. And the perception is like shaped by those who own the vehicles and the organs I'm talking about. If white men are the editors, the writers, the interviewers, that's why our stories are breaking out, because Instagram, because of Twitter. Because we're actually now able to say like, yo, black men are getting shot, black women are getting shot, our children are getting shot. We already knew this, but it's now captured. Now we could put it out into the world. The stories that are being told here are our stories. That's why this space is so critical and why it's so important and why it should be supported. And so for me, it's almost like, yeah, I just want my monument. I'm gonna make sure that before I leave this earth, and you're old enough, I'm gonna get a monument for Brad. That's what I'm talking about. So, questions?
Peace.
Peace.
Thank you so much for your time and sharing with us. I feel like I speak for everybody here. This has been amazing. My question is, I just forgot.
I know that one.
Okay, I got it back. I was just like taken by the moment. My question is, for folks that are feeling very intrigued by some of the concepts that you've talked about tonight, can you give us some more names or films or literature, or so we can take a couple notes on, like, if you want to know, this is what you need to check into, just to kind of share some more resources, really briefly, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Should do literature, Bob.
Look, I recognize we're in a film space, so I want Brad to share, because I think the reality is that this brother right here, his time is so precious for him to be here and to acknowledge he's shooting right now the Central Park 5 with Ava, and so. And so I know we didn't get to everything. It's so rare. We got personal tonight, and I know that a lot of folks here are looking for the technical. So maybe you can give some of the films that you recommend. And Maori, we'll make sure you get like a reading list from both of us, and you can share it out to the community. All right.
Well, there's so many. I mean, really. I mean, I'll just give you a few, but I mean, the film that really changed what I thought film was technically is Within Our Gates, which is an Oscar Michaud film, which really challenged everything I thought good filmmaking was, right? It made me totally reimagine the kind of practice I could have as an image maker. The one that really turned me upside down and tore me apart and still really stresses me and really gives me a lot of positive anxiety, if that exists, but is Ashes and Embers, Haile Gerima's film. It just really it really touches on essentially all of the questions we were sort of trying to unpack tonight, but the thing that really strikes me about that film is that it's a great crossroads between what I think Haile sort of likes to deny, but is totally insanely generous practitioner of, which is this crossroads between the concrete and the abstract, the pragmatic and the surreal. If there's any film I would consider real psychological cinema, it's that film, because it attempts to sort of, it what seems to be an unachievable, sort of unattainable thing in an hour and a half, it really cracks open the post-slavery, post-colonial, contemporary Jim Crow, new Jim Crow, post-war black mind body. And it really visualizes our trauma. It's not just actors saying, I'm hurting. It actually like spins the camera to show you that the character's hurting. It actually, it shows a grandmother squatting in the woods of Virginia, praying for her son to come back home healthy and well from Vietnam, and literally the exact same frame of a Viet Cong woman squatting in the jungle praying for her son to come home. So like there's something that really messed me up. That film really drove me crazy when I first saw it, and I just really aspired to try to touch. I wanted whatever I was gonna do to really make people feel the way I felt when I saw Ashes.
I just want to add, like, we were talking today, we just have to shout Terrence Nance for a random acts of flyness, because we were talking about the way we handle trauma and the way we talk about the art. We were talking about this morning after you watched it last night. I was here for the premiere, which was amazing. The stories that are our stories being told in ways that we can draw it, that gaze is for us. And so I just wanted to shout that out, just because as you're talking about that, when we're dealing with so much trauma in our community, how do we hold it? And just this, I think, is a start path towards that. in terms of just thinking about that.
Yeah. I also think, somebody that we don't talk about a lot because we lost her very early, and I know for a fact is the reason why, Haile is the kind of filmmaker that he is now, is Kathy Collins. And, losing ground, like intellectual, existential, the crisis of the black intellectual, like, I mean, it's a masterpiece film that, it's a forgotten jewel. It has to be actively excavated, you know what I'm saying, from basements. It has to be scraped of mold, literally, in order for us to see it. But all of the questions that we wrestle with, like these dark moments we have, is like black people that are thinking, we're thinking, we're feeling, we're struggling. That film is like, it's there. Yeah. I mean, it was also one that really, really caught me totally off guard and messed me up. Those are three films I think. Once you see those films, then you know that.
Sorry. I was just gonna say one thing for me personally in terms of my framing, and I don't know why people don't talk about him more often in terms of the canon, is Marlon Riggs.
Yep.
And and just color adjustment and ethnic notions. Those are like damn, that's how they fucked us up.
Right.
That's like, come on, JJ. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yep.
Just like.
Right.
Just the way in which his position in his hands, and then we see in Black America. I mean, This Is America, right? And like that whole people talk about minstrelsy. I feel like if you haven't seen or don't know about Marlon Riggs, it's almost like, that's to me. That's just me personally.
No, it's true.
And that's why Haile says intellectual, but
yeah. Or William Graves, Symbiopsychotaxiplasm. Like, forget like race first filmmaking and not a lick of us in it, but the observer watching. Right. I mean, it's one of those films you're just like, the whole process of filmmaking is insane, and it has all of the vestiges of white supremacist insanity embedded in it, so much so that we actually need to turn the camera on the process and be observer of the process to really document how, when you don't self-determine, when you don't do it your way, what ends up happening is what happens on every set that I end up working on, which is like the inevitable stopping of time. Things cannot proceed because the thing that we all knew from day one was going to get in the way ends up getting in the way, you know what I mean? And until that thing, that vector, that wedge is removed, it's always going to stop the process, and that's a film that's totally, and it's part one and part two, and I think many of us in here have probably seen it, but it really does, I think also, we often get to see the film when it's on the screen, right? And that's euphoric, and that's one experience, but I remember Leslie Hewitt said to me one time, she said, Jonna Comfort was speaking about during the whole Black Audio, Sankofa, Chetto time, the whole Black film collective in London at the time, the one thing that they did not do is they didn't document one another. And that documenting of the process is actually arguably more important than the actual
so true.
The filmmaking.
Yo, Rashid, we gotta go.
Oh, okay.
We got Nigela's film coming, and Nigela's in here. We gotta clear it out and whatnot. Sorry, y'all.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a good